are producing food and fashion for a very fast-moving world and in a challenging environment, then this is your home. It simply is just my job to serve you up an array of views and facilitate that conversation for you. And it could be in a way that is different to what other media is around you. And if you are enjoying it, I am very thoroughly glad that you are. Please send any feedback to sarah@sarahscountry.com. As I said, this is your home and it's your opportunity to participate in the conversation however you choose. If you want to consume passively on podcast on your morning walk or commute, or actively by being involved in the comments below where it is broadcast live, or sending us in those thoughts. I'm your host, Sarah Perriam, and it's my absolute privilege to work alongside a extremely talented team at Global HQ that work passionately to unearth the latest from Aotearoa New Zealand's primary sector every week for the Farmers Weekly newspaper and online. It truly is a collective of news and views that is set to drive a conversation forward and basically facilitate that. We work together as a team and on your behalf. So we do truly hope that you are enjoying the format of both Sarah's Country and, of course, the partnership with Farmers Weekly. Now, to drive anything forward is very, very selfless when it is beneficial to the future of a wider cohort of people rather than just yourself. And when you do want to drive something forward, you do need to have an opinion and what you think the right pathway may be. And, I've been thinking the culture of New Zealand's tall poppy syndrome is extremely destructive, and it can at times be worse in our primary sector, in our rural communities, for knocking those who put their heads up and have an opinion or proceed down a pathway that may be different from the past. But not here on Sarah's Country. I want to create a safe place for the brave to give in their 3 cents on how we can solve our biggest challenges, and you the opportunity to listen into their thoughts on the Opinion Maker Show. It's my pledge to you. It's in this day-to-day world to support those around you that have strong opinions that seek change, as it can actually be a lonely world that many don't see those who are driving change, and they're just as scared shitless as those who are wanting the change. Just remember that and be kind. Now, this week's Opinion Maker Show, the task at hand is massive, and the pledge to make a difference is just as brave. Now, back in 2014, our Minister for Primary Industries at the time, Nathan Guy, he put on stand on his pulpit and he said, "We have an ambitious target to double our primary sector exports by 2025. That was a 10-year window, but we needed to employ another 50,000 people to do so, and half of them requiring a tertiary education. We're 7 years on, border closures have only exposed how vulnerable we are to a migrant workforce. And I really want to understand now what has determined a highly skilled person in our sector in 2021. So therefore, a pledge has been to attract the same number of people, but by 2030. What is the right pathway? Do we keep plugging the university degree as the pathway to fill this gap, or in the apprenticeship or online learning? I want to know how broken is the marketing of our sector, first and foremost, as an attractive place to work, before we even get into career pathways and the framework that will support what needs to be lifelong learning. And then we can actually work to retain the wonderfully skilled people within our sector. There has been a lot happening to encourage and provide the learning opportunities to help young employees grow and encourage the existing providers to collaborate, all happening on in the background while we go about our day-to-day work. So here on The Opinion Maker this week, we want to continue to highlight what has been forming Farmers Weekly's new series called Finding 50K, reported by Colin Williscroft. Every week in this week's Farmers Weekly, the government level, there has been a review of vocational education. It's called ROVE, and it includes the establishment of industry-based centres of vocational Excellence, which is known as COVE. There's a Workforce Development Council. There's a panel of young employees giving their advice. There's targeted apprenticeship funding and a primary industry capability alliance research. This is all going on in the background. As well as at industry level, the new Food and Fibre COVE, the Centre of Excellence for Vocational Learning within our sector, a board has formed to take responsibility of the pan-sector approach to pick what is working from the best programs and ensure there's no double-ups. So here's hoping this time it isn't a talk fest and that we can actually make tangible solutions to move forward, and we're not in the same position in 7 years' time. There's also a new industry player known as Agri Academy and an online agricultural education portal that's going to provide this way of hybrid learning on farm and online. Now, in this Opinion Maker this week, our guests include Dairy Training Manager Cath Blake, who will share the work that's been going on in the dairy industry prior to this review of vocational education, and the ways that the dairy industry has been pushing for a new model of training, how to credentialise, and how to have conversations on farm about personal and career development, as opposed to just knowing how to milk cows. And on the panel towards the end of the hour, the shearing industry is getting a kickstart from this hybrid model of both in-shed and online learning platforms. And it is known as WOMOlife, with funding from the government in partnership with the New Zealand Shearing Contractors Association. WOMOlife is a pilot program of Agri Academy. The managing director, Alister Shennan, as well as CEO for the New Zealand Shearing Contractors Association, will explain that it's more than just a training program. It's about marketing what a life in wool looks like, all on our panel. But to kick off the Opinion Maker this week, we're going to firstly understand this review of our vocational education, what it means for our industry and what centres of vocational education actually mean. Federated Farmers Skills and Training spokesperson William Beetham, as well as Masterton Farmer, is on the board, and he joins us next to unpack what a better workplace may look like to retain the employees we need.
This is Sarah's Country, produced in alliance with Farmers Weekly, the place New Zealand farmers turn to for a trusted source of in-depth agricultural journalism. Stay connected to the matters that matter most by subscribing to My Daily Digest at farmersweekly.co.nz.
Oh, nice boots.
Yeah, thanks. They're new.
Ben, you alright?
Oh, yeah, sorry, mate. Just meerkatting pretty hard, eh? Yeah. I just said to myself, Ben, you work hard. You deserve new boots.
Farmers Weekly's Finding 50k series has kicked off in last week's Farmers Weekly, where every week they unpick parts of the good that is going on to get us in the right direction. The target's been moved out to 2030 by those in the industry to pledge to find the 50,000 workers short that we are, and whether they are going to come from a vocational education pathway or a more higher academic tertiary education pathway is yet to be determined. But one dairy farmer has said that the framework is outdated, broken, and creating the wrong behaviours. There is a thing called COVE, which stands for Centres of Vocational Excellence, and a new Food and Fibre COV board has been established with members from across the primary sector. One gentleman who's going to kick us off on this Opinion Maker show is a fellow COV board member and Federated Farmers National board member responsible for skills and training, also Masterton farmer William Beetham joins us now. William, thank you so much for your time and dedication to this massive gaping issue. Why are you personally so passionate about this particular role that you play?
Oh, I think I have a strong belief that I've been given significant opportunities by being involved in this industry, and and I'm really, really grateful for where I live and what I'm able to do. And I want future generations to have those same opportunities. And I just think that, the generation entering our industry has different requirements, think differently. And so, but they present a massive opportunity to our industry, and that's really exciting. So I think we've got to really start to think differently about how we better cater for the new generation coming in, and how we help the current generation of farmers upskill and be better to deliver for that next generation coming in to help move the whole industry forward.
There's some various pillars and to this framework. Attraction is one of them, as is the training that we provide and how we train, as well as the retention of those quality people we've invested in. But over the years, the attractiveness of the primary sector by careers advisors at a high school level hasn't been very well supported, William. Why do you think we're still in this perception of the industry, and what more do we need to do to even start to work down these training pathways?
Yeah, listen, I think the issue has been long going. I mean, when I was at school, we were told that there's no future in farming. You're better off being a lawyer or an accountant. Those perceptions, I think, have changed quite significantly recently, and I think there is a program happening that started out in the East Cape up around Gisborne, and is now in the Wairarapa, called Growing Future Farmers. Now, we've had something like 60 applicants for that program this year, of which there's been 17 that we've found farms, or that have been found by the crew in the Wairarapa to place on farms. 60 applicants of young people, which, from what I understand, a large proportion of those were young women. So what has changed those opportunities for us to access? I think social media has been a huge part of that, almost circumventing the negative aspects of what this careers advisors have been saying and what's been put up about our industry. And so for me, that's incredibly exciting. And I think this is where we can take a much bigger role and opportunity to promote our career through likes of social media and connecting with those who are already doing it on farm, those young people who are doing great jobs already, and really telling that story. But I think there is a requirement for us to have real integrity about our story of having young people working on farms and moving into our industry. And that means that as employers, we've got to make sure that our accommodation is in good condition. Our pastoral care is in great. We have pastoral care systems in place for the young people when they come into our industry, and that we have really strong support networks and further development around those people entering our industry. And I think really demonstrating that sort of a package provides us a great opportunity to continue to attract the best young people in New Zealand.
I totally 100% agree with you, William. I share this often. When we were on the tour, the Will to Live tour with my sister Ali, there was a farmer in Southland who said to his wife, I didn't realise the well-being of my employees was my responsibility. And that was extremely upsetting that we'd got to that part. And you spoke there earlier around young employees coming into the industry, and that we have to treat them differently because they are a different generation with different expectations. They want to feel like they are contributing, but they also want to feel like they are also very connected to their growth through their job. How can the likes of what the role of Federated Farmers do to explain that the workplace of the future on farms has to be a completely different way of being?
Yeah, I think the role of our organisation is to continue so our organisation is ground up. Members on the ground who are elected into positions and who look to take opportunities to rise through to speak for farmers and be really, really connect back to our council members and our elected members who are still out in our provinces. So that's, for our organisation, what role do we take? We take the role of actually understanding exactly what's happening on farm, those challenges of farmers. I think farmers generally want to be good employers, but there's many restrictions in a modern farming environment in terms of getting things done, financial pressures, all the other issues that we need to think of. So how do we as an organisation effectively advocate within the training and skills space in New Zealand to say, how can we better support our farmers in this space to ensure that what a farmer struggles with delivering and understanding that on the ground, because we're in constant communication with farmers on the ground, actually communicating that to those who are delivering our training going forward. And so I think that's an important role, and conduit is a vital role that our organisation plays in giving real understanding to those who are delivering going forward. Communicating with our farmers, I think there's a real opportunity going forward, and I think both industry, Federated Farmers and government has a role in better connecting with all of our farmers and getting a greater understanding of what their responsibilities are around people. And if we can do that in a really positive light and create those opportunities and present different ways of doing things, I think that will be well adopted by farmers. And I also think, we've got to think of our farms as a community, not as an individual farm, as a silo. And I think that's a big opportunity. There used to be big farms and young people trained on those farms, and they would have lots of support around that. Well, the times have changed. There is less employees on the same farm, but the same amount of employees operating in the community. And so approaching pastoral care and support for young people as a community is a real opportunity.
William, you're involved with what is known as COV, the industry-based centres of vocational excellence, and we have a range of different ways that we train within the industry, but there is a lot of double up, and there's a lot of examples that haven't gone so well. How does the food and fibre COV that you're a part of become more than just, let's say, a talk fest, and actually see some action happening for some collaboration within these organisations?
Well, the setup of the Food and Fibre Centre of Vocational Excellence is part of the road review, or the review of vocational excellence that the Vocational Education Government did a while ago. And what really came out of that review is that training organisations across New Zealand need to work more collaboratively. They need to work much closer with industry and employers, and they also need to have much more consistent, education programs and qualifications. So that's sort of that the whole vocational training sector is going through and being reviewed and being restructured into. Where we sit within the COVE is I see that we are experienced employers, farmers, and also be involved in the industry, and we need to take a strong look of what's actually happening on farm and what is going well and what isn't going so well, and think of innovative ways to deliver. And it's up to the directors of the COVE to lead those projects, ensure that these needs are being met, and that we're really thinking differently. How do we deliver for future generations?
It's a very, very big task, and thank you so much for all your dedication to the cause. That's William Beetham there from Federated Farmers, responsible for skills and training, the portfolio for Federated Farmers, and as just explained there, sitting on the board of the Centre for Vocational Excellence, which is education, my apologies. Now, coming up in the Opinion Makers show, we are going to be joined by Cath Blake, who's extremely passionate about training within the dairy industry, as she has been involved with her husband Ed for over 20 years and is now a tutor as part of dairy training. She's letting us in on what has been happening on the ground when it comes to dairy training and how this will bolt into the review of vocational education.
This is Sarah's Country. Catch the latest on the matters that matter most wherever you are. Listen to Sarah's Country on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple or Google Podcasts. Try asking Alexa or Siri. Play Sarah's Country on podcast.
Australia and New Zealand are home to some of the world's most innovative farming pioneers. Zematic is proud to partner with farmers who are committed to leading the way in sustainable water management. The Trailblazer Sustainable Irrigation Awards celebrate sustainable irrigation management, irrigation-driven improvements, waterway protection and environmental stewardship. See how our Trailblazers are leading the way at irrigationtrailblazer.com/winners.
Well, along with her husband, Ed, our next guest has been in the dairy industry for over 20 years, firstly starting out share milking and working their way through to farm ownership. Cath Blake is joining us now from Dairy Training Limited, where she is involved with diploma level training and is extremely passionate about education, particularly in the dairy industry. Cath, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on our Opinion Maker show, where we're in search of finding 50,000 workers by 2030 is the goal. We've talked just to William Beetham just before around this review of vocational education, but I understand that the dairy industry has been working on a new model in finding pathways prior to the government's recent involvement. Can you give us a bit of background around what has been bubbling away and you have been involved with?
Sure. I think the dairy industry has recognised that there is other opportunities for learning. We have a very formal system that's funded by government, but there is a lot of learning that takes place on farm, that takes place through peer-to-peer, farmer to farmer, and also through discussion groups and workshops by vets. And we're attempting to build a model that recognises both the formal training and the non-formal training. So, we think learning is changing. People are not so interested in big, long qualifications. They want bite-sized chunks of learning and when they need it on farm, a bit like the old YouTube videos. So that's the direction that we're trying to head. Rove also has come into play, which is great. So I think the government has also recognised that the formal system needs some change, and we hope that's where it's going.
Yeah, and I've got here some information back from 2014 when Dairy NZ actually came out saying we need 1,000 agricultural-related graduates, and words such as, high level of education, high academic focus. Do you think that we finally realised that is the wrong approach, or do we need a balance of both, do you think?
I think we need a balance of both. We need skills right through the dairy industry, from our farm assistants right through to our business owners. And it's very easy sometimes to focus on the new entrants, but if we don't have good people that are employers, we are unlikely to get people coming into the industry. So we actually have to train right through people's careers. It's really important to make the best workplace we can.
And that's what I absolutely have been looking forward to speaking to you about, because it is this concept around lifelong learning, and that we're continuously developing it, and it doesn't have to be through a set channel, because those initial entrants into the sector end up being people managers just as much as they are pasture or animal managers, and we don't seem to have a framework yet that supports the development of all of those skills.
That's correct, and especially it's been focused in that formal area, and we want people to have a journey through their career where they move from non-formal training on farm training into workshops by their local vets, and then do a course, then do a formal course when they need it, and then move back into non-formal. So it's like this pathway through their career that gives them the learning they need right at that time, and we're not sort of plugging a whole lot of learning into them that they don't need at this time, and yes, it's very relevant. It's what we call just-in-time learning. And so over that journey, they build those skills to become the best managers, people managers, money managers, stock and grass managers that they can be by the end of their career.
And I love the word credentialisation. So it's one thing to learn, but another to acknowledge you've learned.
That's right. So we're exploring this credentialisation type, almost like badging process. How can we recognise all the learning that someone does in their career? So TSC, the government, have come to the party, if you so to speak, with the introduction of micro-credentials. And so we're seeing some shorter courses being funded by government, and I think that's a really huge step. So we're credentialising, we're looking at ways we can recognise people's knowledge and learning as they move through their career.
And what I also like is that there seems to be a move in terms of online learning through videos, but you really need to have the right people presenting their experience as opposed to, someone straight out of university and shoved in front of a camera.
Absolutely correct. So we know that farmers learn from farmers. They're often really practical people, kinesthetic learners. So they like to learn by trying things, by physically being involved. So, this year's Go Dairy training that we ran that had physical, absolutely in the shed, working with livestock, working with machinery, and having that hands-on experience is huge. It really does grow and develops the skills we need. In terms of the videos, I think they're really good for the short, sharp piece of knowledge that someone needs just at that time. And also we're using things like virtual reality headsets. We're trialling all sorts of things that we hope will work to raise skills and capability in the industry.
And also too, there's been a group that have come together to provide young employees, giving their advice on how to retrain people within the industry, because their value systems are different, not only their learning styles, but they want to feel like they are contributing to a business, that their personal development is being acknowledged as well. What have you learned around how the generational shift in how we treat our workplaces these days is differing?
Absolutely, yeah. And we've moved into this sort of personal development, career growth. We're talking these sort of words a lot more. We used to talk about level 2, 3, 4, and 5 training, but it was very much about cows and grass and production. Now we're starting to, recognise personal skills in this. So leadership skills, coaching skills, being part of a team, all those kind of real personal development skills. So absolutely, we're introducing those more and more into the training that's being offered.
Yeah, I don't like when they're called soft skills, because I think for a lot of us, they are quite hard skills to learn. Cath, what would you most like to see industry lead on and stop waiting for government?
Well, I actually think collaboration between industry and government, much clearer guidelines between the two would be the best outcome. And I think our new Centre of Vocational Excellence, the Cove, William Beetham and Ben Alomes are both on that board. Their intent is to bring together industry and government and research to find the best solutions to educate our industry. So, fingers crossed, that is a really good initiative, and we hope that it's not just talking about it, it's actually seeing some action at the end of it, and we can see some changes to what we do.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. Cath Blake there from Dairy Training Limited. She's in dairy farming herself, as well as a tutor on the ground, and fantastic work that Cath is doing with Dairy Training Limited. And we're going to continue the conversation around what does collaboration actually tangibly mean as we move towards bringing getting rid of double ups and actually bringing a framework that's going to work, that's going to find us 50,000 employees that we are short by 2030. On our panel this week, we have coming up very shortly Alister Shennan from a new concept called Agri Academy, and Phil Holden, the CEO of Shearing Contractors Association, that's right behind the work Agri Academy are doing.
This is Sarah's Country. Join the conversation. Have thoughts on an interview? Or have you got questions you want answered by a future guest? Let us know. Email sarah@sarahscountry.com.
We turn now to our panel on our Opinion Makers show here on Sarah's Country, continuing the theme of the series, which is in Farmers Weekly, titled Finding 50K. That's 50,000 people that we pledge to find now by 2030, off the back of the Minister for Primary Industry, Nathan Guy's outlook back in 2014. Of course, COVID has exposed our vulnerabilities of our labour shortages across many industries, and one of them was the shearing industry, the harvesting of our wool. So we welcome to the panel Phil Holden, the Chief Executive of the New Zealand Shearing Association, and Alister Shennan from Agri-Academy. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time and effort that you're putting not only into the industry, but of course this discussion. Phil, I'll start with you. In the New Zealand Shearing Contractors Association, through Kaiaka Wool Industry Training New Zealand, has recently embarked on a pilot program. Could you just set the scene for us and where the industry's capability gaps are and what the work is currently going on?
Well, good morning, Sarah, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. And g'day, Alister. So, well, firstly, if I take a step back, shearing training in New Zealand has been the subject of a lot of debate and focus, I'd say, for at least a 10-year period. And since the demise of the wool board and the levy structure and then the training programs that were put in place from a wool harvesting perspective, it's been very fragmented. And there've been some very good players who have, been the backbone of the industry and from a training perspective for a long period of time, but nothing of any substance or scale to fill, the gaps that the industry's had. And it's mainly around competency. And there's been lots of initiatives that have tried, and realising that they weren't working for the industry, the New Zealand Shearing Contractors Association applied to what was then the Provincial Growth Fund and for some funding support to establish some pilot programs that are led by the industry to deliver on the industry's needs in Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Otago and Southland. And through that particular process, our application was successful. And in order to manage the appropriation of those funds, the Kaiaka Wool Industry Training New Zealand was established as a governance entity. So every year we've been bringing in historically, I think, somewhere between 150 to 200 odd shearers internationally to bridge the gaps at peak times. Clearly with COVID that has not happened, although this year we did get some border dispensation from Immigration New Zealand to bring in 30 odd to cover the main shear period. But there's never enough to sustain the needs of individual contractors and their businesses. And part of it is the transient nature to a certain degree of the industry, the regionality of it, and there's peaks and troughs. But equally, the flip side of it is that there is a real opportunity from a career perspective to have a sustainable career in wool harvesting, being shearing and wool handling. So once the association had secured the funds from the PGF, Kaiaka was established, and then Kaiaka undertook a process to identify who was going to deliver be the service provider or providers to deliver the training in those particular pilot regions. And through that process, WOMOlife or Agri-Academy was identified and selected by the trustees. That's the long-winded version of how we landed where we are.
Fantastic. And we're talking to the tune of $1.8 million and a great segue into our other panellist here with us, Alister Shennan from Agri-Academy. Alister, WOMOlife is the formation or foundation of where Agri-Academy could go. Let's start with the objectives of WOMOlife and this whole concept of a life in wool.
Yeah, so when we sort of were putting our concepts together, we sort of were very clear about a couple of things that needed to be happen. One was there needed to be a new model, and there needed to be sort of a real focus on not just the technique, but the movements combined, so that people would actually, have longer, more sustainable careers through, knowing what they should be doing with their body and all those kind of important things. So WOMOlife was born, and WOMO is effectively short for work-wise, move-wise, so it kind of encapsulates that idea. But it really is a proof of concept of a very different model that we see working for vocational training and built around competencies, which is the thing that Phil was talking about before. So we see that the industry needs to build its skills quickly, and the kind of skills that the wool harvesting industry needs. They're very technical and repetitive in nature, and basically once you learn them, you just keep improving on them. So WOMO was really built to focus on that. And what we saw with the vocational training model is, you needed to do in-shed training, but the reality was what you needed was an online program as well to support it. So it doesn't work in isolation, it's all working together. And, the pilots that we've done prior to sort of going live, effectively people are doing their online courses, they're coming in and they're asking really good, intelligent questions, and the learning outcomes are much better. So that's in sort of a short course environment. So we've built WOMO, and we've successfully created a program for the wool industry called A Life in Wool. So not only does that talk about doing the online stuff and the in-shed training, it actually talks about trying to attract people into the industry. So our model is really about identifying people who are going to be successful in the industry. And if you boil it down, we're actually looking for rural athletes, because if you're going to do 300 plus sheep a day, that's like running a marathon. So you're going to have to be at a certain level of fitness. So that means nutrition, hydration, keeping your head in the game, all sorts of things. So it was very important to us that we had a picture of the kinds of people that we were looking for, and then we built A Life in Wool as sort of a campaign. It's early stages yet, but it's the place people will go to find out about the wool industry and do their registrations for the programs that are underway. So we've got an upskilling program underway at the moment, and I think we've received about 150 registrations on the website for that already. So it's really just getting going, early stages, and we will build it out over time, but it's focusing on people that are new to the industry, and in the second half of the year we will bring people in sort of effectively probably from schools and other environments who haven't got the background of, say, someone who's got 12 to 18 months in the industry today.
Phil, there's been a real change in the way, and I love the words that Alister just said there, we're looking for rural athletes. I mean, in my father's generation, people went shearing to buy their first farm, like they would go to the freezing works. That was their fulfillment process to join that industry or that career. But it's since changed, and I'd really love to know in the attraction pillar of a campaign like A Life for Wool, what is the value systems and the purposeness of why people would want to enter into the wool industry?
Well, I think that's a really pertinent question, Sarah, and was one of the main reasons, one of several reasons actually, that the trustees of Kaiaka identify WOMOlife to be the preferred service provider. Because one of the issues that the industry's done is it's never actually projected itself in a way to attract new people coming in. So, the reality is that whole notion of a rural athlete and the dedication and the commitment that requires represents quite a significant shift in the way that you can then market and communicate that to new people coming into the industry. And if you start going, well, you can have a viable career, you can live rurally, you can earn some fairly reasonable money in a short period of time, provided you've got, you work hard, but you can deliver on that relatively quickly. You can stay living close to your whānau and your local community, then, and then you can travel internationally. We used to be able to. Hopefully we will be at some point in the future. And if you are so predisposed to it, you can actually compete through the shearing sports side of it. So if you start bundling up those sorts of stories as for an industry, it looks quite different. And we're excited about the potential for that. We're excited about using the words career for wool harvesting, because that is real. That is a real opportunity. And, you can come into the sector. You might use it as a potential stepping stone to purchase your own farm or do whatever, but you might actually set up your own things. You might become your own contracting business. You might decide to be a trainer because that's what you decide you want to do. But because we're now open our minds to the opportunity of thinking like that presents, it does create some more opportunity rather than just being quite narrow about it. So we're excited about that opportunity from a rural athlete, a career in shearing or wool harvesting, that sort of thinking presents.
Yeah, absolutely. Alister, when it comes to agricultural education going into an online portal, this is not new. E-learning has been around for quite some time of what you have been involved in. But our sector has a lot to catch up on, understanding that a hybrid model is very much a pathway for continuous learning. Could you share with us your background in online education and your learnings about how it differs for agriculture, but at the same time, when we capture that opportunity, we can really elevate?
Yeah, well, I think if I really encapsulated what's my background, I've always been a leader in customer-focused industries. And, I was in Australia, I returned to New Zealand, I got a job with the primary ITO, reasonably senior job. And I was quite frustrated with the way that it was all focused about just you got to enrol people because we've got a target to meet, and 70% of the money went to running the organisation and not going to delivering. So, I left. And, I've mulled on it for a while, and I realised, that the reality is we're not doing a good job for the kids that are leaving school that want to have a career in agriculture. A, we're not giving them a pathway to come into the industry. But B, probably even more importantly, there really is no competency-based training for those first 2 years. So, there aren't, education programs, training programs that deal with what you do in the first couple of years as a dairy assistant. The wool harvesting industry, we've well canvassed that. It's on and on and on. They're right across the spectrum. So there's actually nothing there. So we know that people actually want to hire people and they want to have them in apprentice programs, for example, but there's no training programs to support them. So this is one of the reasons why, people are falling out of the industry. And we see our role as really sort of tackling that quite aggressively and really trying to work with schools, get people into industry, work with industry groups like Shearing Contractors Association who are committed to actually, employing people and training them and developing them and seeing them prosper. So our whole focus really is about launching successful careers, and we've got a goal to launch 50,000 successful careers. That's our purpose. And agriculture just is poorly served in this space. So we've set up the business to tackle that. And, it's not just about doing training in classrooms and sending people off to institutions at the end of the workday. I mean, they're buggered. They actually can't focus. They're tired. They've done a big day's work, especially in shearing. If you want to send someone off to a classroom for a 5 o'clock session, watch some PowerPoints and things like that, they're fried. It's not good. So, we just think the whole model needed to change. So the whole focus is really on, let's try and get the courses out there for people, which is the most important thing. And then let's try and get a community of trainers across New Zealand. So in our sort of perfect world, we'd have a trainer within 50 kilometres of every farm or rural small business in New Zealand, and they'd be able to go in there and they would be able to use the resources that we have and spend the time with the business or the individual or group of people, a cohort, whatever it is, and they would actually be able to make a difference, right? And those sorts of people could well be retired farmers, people who think they want to put a day aside for some industry good. It's a very different model to thinking that you've got to employ someone on a salary and give them a car and tell them to drive around and do various things, and then you've got all your expenses of your head office. That's not our model. Our model basically is we'll have the content, the learning content, very video-centric, and we'll also have the people on the ground. And that's where the majority of our money goes. It doesn't go into, classrooms and buildings and infrastructure and all that sort of stuff.
And Agri Academy is partnered with Global HQ, has been industry funded and is not top down. And so isn't that just absolutely incredible when they finally grabbed the bull by the horns? And I loved what Alister said there with regards to it's about the real training of the experienced people on the ground, Phil, within WOMOlife. It's a who's who of the wool industry, who the tutors are. Absolutely incredible people that you'd inspire to stay in the industry, and particularly from their background stories. Everyone from Mouse O'Neill in Central Otago, Sarah Higgins, who we've had on Sarah's Country, of course, in the Shearing sports world, people know Stratty, Nathan Stratford, and head trainer Carmen Smith, overseeing it with 25 years of knowledge. That in itself must be inspiring for those watching those videos, Phil.
Oh, look, there's no doubt about it. I mean, they're a quality collection of people, and I would suggest that's the start of it. So, we're hugely buoyed by the fact that there are some high-quality people attracted to the model because it's a good one, and I'm very confident that Alister and his team, the professionalism that they are going to lift and deliver across the sector will be very noticeable from where we've been in the past, and that's not being critical of anybody. It's just a natural evolution. We're in the 21st century. It's time to do things and tackle things a little bit differently, and I think that was at the forefront of the Kayaka trustees' minds. If we keep doing what we've always done, we might get the same result we've always got, and this represented a chance to take a step forward and do something a bit different. But the quality of people involved are very encouraging and heartening, and I think that they will, they're being selected also by WOMO because of their communication skills, and I think that's really important aspect of it. They've got to be able to engage with the people that they're teaching and coaching, and that's another word that's probably not been used before, and just fits nicely into that rural athlete type of mentality. So comm skills, coaching ability, and just, I think are going to be really important in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a way of the future. I mean, how many people are doing yoga via YouTube in lockdown? It's the first place you learn any skill set these days. And but the thing is, having a framework around it that provides credentials is just as important, and aggregating the new and existing training. WOMOlife, Alister, I understand, is only the beginning of the mission for Agri Academy, and you've been having some industry-wide conversations over the last couple of months. What's been your biggest learning of, patch protection, the competition? How do we actually fix a broken model?
Well, I think that's really the heart of it. We have a new model. It's not actually, when you break it apart, it's actually common sense, but it's very different from the way people are delivering today. So, and people have a lot of money invested in, the infrastructure and the people and the way they do things and how they get funded. So for them, making a change is actually quite a scary thing, and it's difficult for them to do. So what we basically said is, well, we'll be a pathfinder. We'll show you how to do it. It's not scary. You can do it. Our vision is not to be the only provider of these services in the sector. I mean, Agri Academy is effectively a marketplace. We'd love to see more and more people offering their services in the marketplace because, we can't do it all. We just welcome the collaboration of the industry. And it's a model that we see this as being quite a democratisation of education. No one person should actually hold on to, this knowledge. It should be widely distributed. I mean, we'll license our learning to anybody who's actually delivering agricultural training, and we'll do it at a fair price, right? And so these are all models and concepts that exist in the rest of the world, but for, lots of reasons, people can't, get out of first gear to think about making a change. And so that's why we raised some money. That's why we built WOMOlife as a proof of concept. And that's why Global HQ joined us in Agri Academy, because they share the vision as well. And, there's been too many reports for too long saying we need 50,000 people. And, So we decided that we would tackle one of the biggest issues affecting that, which is the way that people are sold into the industry, introduced and developed in those critical first couple of years. And the model that's there today doesn't work for them because it's an education model and it assumes you want to continue on a sort of an education pathway. But this is all about competencies. And if you know how to work in a milk shed, you know how to see that cow's got mastitis, or you know how to do your blows when you're shearing. Those are all great skills, right? And those are the things we could focus on. And then you get the choice to say, well, do I want to be shearing for the rest of my life, or do I want to be in a milk shed for the rest of my life? Or so about the time you're sort of 18, 19, 20, you're starting to think about, I really like this, I'm going to stay, or actually I've enjoyed it, but I want to go and do something else. And the chances are they'll stay in the industry. And this is the thing, this is the pathway that we haven't had before. So if we can actually bring people in, give them a good experience, give them a grounding. It's the old story, I started in the mailroom and now I'm the CEO of the company. I mean, how many times have you heard that story? Well, we want people to start in the wool sheds. We want them to start in the dairy sheds and go on to be, innovators and entrepreneurs, and providing a huge impetus for the opportunity that exists in agriculture today. So, we just think this will help unlock a lot of talent in the industry.
Alister, you've nailed it on the head, and someone who knows a thing or two about being a CEO is, of course, Phil. Phil, your career pathway has been at executive level across multiple different industries, not just in the agricultural sector. And the whole discussion we had earlier in the program with William Beetham and with Cath Blake, and of course in this week's Farmers Weekly, there's a cohort of young employees saying, look, we need an environment to grow in and be nurtured and feeling like we have some responsibility in the company or the workplace that we are in. What's your learnings as a chief executive in retaining staff, regardless of the industry, and what the ag sector need to learn from?
Well, I think it's pretty simple sort of stuff, and thank you for those kind words, Sarah. So, look, people just need to feel valued more than anything else, I think, and they need to feel that there is, a bit of a pathway for them, and not everyone needs to be or wants to be the chief executive or whatever the case may be. But as long as they feel valued, that they're making a contribution, that they are being supported, whether that's emotionally in particular, I think those are really powerful things that leaders can deliver for their staff and their team. It's that old saying about, listening is a really powerful thing, and if you create time to listen to your people and support and encourage them, then that's a really powerful thing. And I guess I've been lucky enough in my career to know when it's time to stand in front of your people, when it's time to stand behind them, and when it's time to stand beside them. And if you can get, to me, it's always been about people. So if you can get your head around that as a notion, then that becomes quite a powerful way to empower and engage and support people, because I've always got a big kick out of the development and personal development of people that have been in teams or businesses or organisations that I've been lucky enough to lead. So that's been my modus operandi, and I think that that's what is going to happen here. I've got no doubt about it that we're on a paradigm shift, and in terms of how we need to look after our people that come into the sector, and the opportunities that might present for them across the entire primary product sector. I think is quite exciting.
And Alister, what's your thoughts on how embracing online portals can be a way of that instant feedback and gratification of that personal development that people need to get out of it, to stay, to create a life within something?
Look, I think the thing about online, and it gets sort of a bit of a bad rap because it's really just another way to connect with people at a time in their life. And if you've got good learning content and, people are looking at, and then you've got, farmers or shearing contractors or whatever it is, actually, Mary or Johnny go and ask a question. I say, oh, that's a good question. It's all about respect at the end of the day. And, the way that we're set up at the moment, it's not set up for success. And, we don't have all the answers, but we know the sorts of issues that kind of get ignored, which is a bugbear of mine in terms of a lot of the training that's out there at the moment. The dyslexia and the literacy and the numeracy issues, it's not going to be done in a classroom. It's actually going to be done by, as you said before, it's the YouTube generation. They're immersed in social media. They can watch and they can learn and they can ask a good question and they can be shown how to do something. And so the how and the why is really going to become very, very clear to them very quickly. And I'll give you an example. I sat next to someone at the Dairy Awards dinner, a Dairy Farmer of the Year kind of thing. And I was having a chat to them, and the guy who was the partner, so it was a husband and wife team, they were share milking. And, he proudly said, I'm dyslexic. It's not an impediment for him. And his partner said, yeah, he is, but we work really well together. And no one beats him in terms of his work ethic and his intelligence and thinking about things. So I think this will help make a change and will bring in some new thinking and some new ways to do it. So if you look at our videos, you'll see some of our shearers are wearing a Nathan Stratford. He wears a blue moccasin occasionally in some of our videos. That's because some people can't tell the difference between left and right, but they can tell which is the blue shoe. So, these are and we're just scratching the surface on this. We're going to get better and better as we go on, because Phil made a comment earlier. We've just started. This is like software. We'll get the first version out there, and people, we'll have to make some changes because we haven't got it 100% perfect. I know that. But, we will make changes, and, version 2 will be even better. But that version 2 will actually have a lot of feedback from people that say, oh, well, you've missed this, or we didn't quite understand that. We're not defensive about that. We would embrace it. So that's our culture. That's what we're trying to promulgate and drive. And, the partnership with the shearing contractors is just is a tremendous opportunity for New Zealand to actually think, to see a new way of doing things and make a difference in the lives of young New Zealanders.
Fantastic way to end there. Thank you so much, Alister Shennan, who is the Managing Director of WOMOlife and also co-founder of Agri Academy in partnership with Global HQ. And thank you so much to the appetite of the New Zealand Shearing Contractors Association and partnering with this in terms of a pilot program to see Agri Academy get off the ground and be part of a collaborative framework, as Alister put it very well, a marketplace of all of the existing and new to come together to solve a common goal. This is not a time for patch protection. This is a time to find 50,000, that's right. And now we're pushing that pledge out to 2030, but I believe that we can do it. Thank you very much to Phil Holden, Chief Executive there of New Zealand Shearing Contract Association, and Alister Shennan there from Agri Academy. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in to Sarah's Country's Opinion Maker this week. I took a lot away from those 4 conversations and actually felt positive that we're moving in the right direction, that this actually could be a time where we do move beyond a talk fest around a massive gaping problem that we have in Aotearoa New Zealand's farming and growing sector, which is our labour shortages, but also the retention of great people and how we can paint this career as a life that people are passionate about being a part of. Just as everybody that is listening that works in it, and including myself, we feel like we've dedicated our lives to the sector, which is feeding and clothing people. It's absolutely incredible. Every single person who has a role to play in it is working in that direction. So how do we find 50,000 people? The pledge has been set by Agri Academy, and we have the countdown of 9 years to achieve that by 2030. 30. I'd absolutely love your thoughts and input. I'd like to continue this theme on an Opinion Maker show into the future. So therefore, you've got any suggestions of guests we need to talk to in this space, please email me, sarah@sarahscountry.com, and within the next month, I would like to return to this topic and continue to unpack the problems and look for more industry-led solutions, because it's absolutely fantastic, the work that is going on, and we look to highlight those change makers, and leading me on to what is known as our Change Makers show tomorrow. We have a great lineup for you, talking everything from lasers replacing workers in the vineyards that need to scare away those naughty birds. Tim Bodica, I know very well from Central Otago, viticulture's owner, has come up with the technology of using lasers for bird control. A rare investment opportunity in dairy goats has seen dairy farmer Charlie Adhere expand from milking cows to goats. That will be extremely interesting, as well as New Zealand's rural broadband market getting a ramp up from a technology called Connected Farms. Our Chief Executive Tom Andrews will explain about the pilot farms here in New Zealand and how the technology will work under our current rural broadband network and its struggles. Arable industry growers leading change is well underway in a FAR and MPI, so that's Foundation for Arable Research and Ministry for Primary Industries funded project, and Erica Callahan, who's coordinating the Growers Leading Change, will join me in studio. In the meantime, thank you so much for your time and listening. I really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow night, live from 7 p.m. on sarahscountry.com, as well as, of course, on demand for your pleasure on podcast. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Ka kite anō.